Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Great to see everyone. I'm muting everyone because we've got a lot of people who said they were coming today, which is very exciting to me. I have an agenda that you can see up in the tab. I think you'll get at least the headlines of where we're going with this call. But I'm going to start a little poll here as folks are coming in. I would love to hear what's your biggest challenge with mixed level classes. So you can put your answer in there, and I'm going to just let anybody come in who wants to come in, admit all. Also love for you to open the chat and tell me who you are, where you're from, and what kind of yoga students you typically serve. That way we'll get a sense of the multicultural global collective here. As you're coming in, you will see two things. You'll see a poll that's open right now to share what your biggest challenge is. And also you'll see a chat in the bar along the left there. You can open the chat and drop in your name. Hi, I'm Sage in Central NC, and who you serve, where I work with athletes. That way we'll get a sense of who's here and where you are coming from. Make sure that you take the time to fill in the poll. That's really helpful for me as well. It gives me a sense of how I can best help you, which is not just the subject here today, but what we are doing for all of our work together in the zone, and of course what we're doing as we work to serve our students. Great. Hi, Judy. Lots of all level classes. I think that's why we had so much demand for today's workshop, because there are so many of us who teach classes that seem to welcome all comers. And I think that we have sometimes some nerves about that. So I hope to assuage your nerves here today. Woo, Poland. Awesome. Excellent. Look at this. We're already quite global. I absolutely love it. Fantastic. Y'all keep that coming there in the chat for me. We've got a few more minutes to continue to welcome folks in. As you get here, you could put in the poll that's currently open. What is your biggest challenge as you come to mixed level classes? And I set this poll up so that you could say it's really all of these, or you could choose one or two or three. I ran through my slides and flashcards and polls with my husband, and he chose every single one of these, including I can't choose. So that was a good experiment here, getting us up to speed on this platform. If you aren't familiar with this platform, as we continue to welcome folks in, let me point out a few features. So this is a platform called Butter, as you might deduce from looking at it. It's an alternative to platforms like Zoom or Google Meet. One thing I love about it is that it auto records for me, so I don't have to remember to hit record, which somehow I always seem to forget. What this call is being recorded. You are not being recorded. I have it set, I think, to feature just me. But if you are in witness protection and would rather have your video off, that's absolutely fine. In fact, if you want to log out and log back in under a pseudonym, that's absolutely fine with me too. All right. Hi, Beth Ann. My daughter is in Ann Arbor. Today she took the train from Ann Arbor to Chicago for the weekend, but she just wrapped up her master's study at Mish. All right, so we're going to keep the poll open for another minute or so, and I'm going to begin to introduce myself. Oh, I was in the process, though, of showing you how to use the bar at left. So if you are distracted by your own beauty, you can hit the video button and then the H. So you can hover over the video or type the letter H and hide yourself. You also can turn your video on or off from that video button or by using the keyboard letter V. If you ask a question a little bit later, then we can take you off of mute. That would be the M button. You can hit the C button to enter the chat. You can react with an R button, and then you can choose a number to put like the fire emoji or the brain emoji. Like, this is making me think like that. It's kind of silly, but it's also kind of fun. If you've just gotten here, please let us know in the chat who you are, where you live, and whom you help. Who do you teach in your yoga classes? Because we're here today to discuss how to include almost everyone in class. Before I close the poll, let me take a second to tell you who I am if we haven't met or connected yet in a live setting like this. My name is Sage Rountree. That is my real name. It's not just my yoga teacher name. I know it sounds like an imaginary pseudonym, but my parents gave me the name Sage and my husband gave me the last name Rountree. It's spelled with no letter D because it's a corruption of the English surname Rowan Tree. So for those of you in the UK, it may be familiar to you in its variety of spellings. Sage Rountree is my name. I am in central North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Scarborough, Hillsborough. I currently live in Hillsborough. This is my new studio, my new house in Hillsborough, North Carolina. I own a brick and mortar yoga studio called Scarborough Yoga Company, aka Carolina Yoga Company. And then I also own a virtual yoga studio focused on teacher development. That is where we are meeting here in the ether at Comfort Zone Yoga. And Comfort Zone Yoga is here to help you become almost everyone's favorite yoga teacher and include almost everyone in class. We'll be breaking down that almost a little bit in today's call. I'm recording today's call, so if you have to go, know that I will be posting the recap for you, and I'll probably edit this down and put some of it on YouTube as well. So I'm going to close our poll and move us on through our agenda as we keep going. You can see the poll results in the chat. To open the chat, you can hit the C button, or you can look in the left-hand sidebar. Planning sequences that work for everyone is our winner here. Well, I'm not surprised by that because we feel like when we're teaching a multi-level class, we really want to include almost everyone, or we want to include everyone in class. And I'm going to give you a little lecture saying, let's try not to include everyone, but to include almost everyone. So that's what we're heading into here. And by the end of this about hour-long call, you'll have the SERVE method, which is a framework that I've developed to help us create all levels classes that serve almost everybody in class. We'll also enjoy some cake together. I'll talk about the layer cake approach and give you some practical tools to make mixed level classes your very favorite to teach. I see the sun is starting to come in strong, so I'm going to turn myself just a little bit. There we go, so you don't get that blare on your computer screen. So that is where we are heading into the sense of how we can include almost everyone in class. Let me ask you a new question. We've got a new poll for you. This is fun. These are called flashcards. So you're going to see them. And if you're like, that's me, you can tap on it, stamp it, and it'll put your avatar, your initials, or your photo onto these flashcards for us. Tell me which of these resonate the most with you when you were thinking about planning all levels classes. What worries you? Are you terrified about getting this expression from your beginner students? If so, you can tap on that. And we'll go through these a couple times so everybody gets a chance to choose. Are you worried about the advanced students? And let me put quotes around advanced because everybody's scared of this guy. Okay. I know that we think advanced practitioners are going to be bored in my class if I wind up teaching to the beginners or the middle of the room. But y'all, truly advanced yogis like yourselves know that they can modify the practice. They know what to do. They've done it for years probably, and they know the value of simplicity. They know the importance of breaking down the basics for the newer students, and they're not there to judge you in the way that you think they are. It's those intermediate students who I think are attached with their egos to making shapes like you see in this guy here. But the really advanced students are going to be your biggest proponents, your most loyal students, because they know what they're doing. They're coming to class to let somebody else drive the bus. Even if they're yoga teachers, they come to turn off their critical thinking brain and to enjoy the practice. So don't be scared of true advanced students. Or maybe you're worried about having mixed level chaos in class. This is a picture that I chose from one of my most recent brand shoots at the studio, because some of you may know my best friend there, Jenny Rawlings, at the left of the screen. She is an advanced practitioner, wonderful yoga teacher. If you don't know Jenny, her name is spelled with an I, and you can find her at jennyrawlings.com. She delivers all kinds of just absolutely wonderful, anatomically sound, evidence-based content for us as yoga teachers. So we got Jenny on one end of the screen. That's Jenny's husband, Craig, who is a sociology professor at Duke University down the road in the middle. And then you might see Kelly in the red top there on top. Kelly was 9 months pregnant at this photo shoot. We shot this on a Saturday and she was scheduled for a C-section on Friday. So she was 6 days, 5 days from delivering the baby that you might notice there in her belly. And maybe you've had classes like this that feel like, whoa, I've got this whole range from very pregnant Kelly to Jenny Rawlings all in the same class. Or maybe you think the problem is you and that you seem to lose all your words or freeze up when you are faced with one of these scenarios: the confused beginner student, the demanding advanced student, or the wildly strange group of a motley crew in class. Yeah, so we're all, I think, recognizing ourselves in each of these. I'm going to scroll through them one more time. Let me start it over. We've got the overwhelmed beginners. If that feels like you can tap that one. We have got the impatient advanced student who might scare us. If that scares you, you can tap that guy again. If you're like, yes, you're scary to me. We're like releasing our fears, I guess, as we tap these. We've got that mixed level class where we have a little bit of everything. Oh, Carolyn, your chat just popped up. Yeah, forgetting the name, Chaturanga is this guy, this Keenan character here. Yeah, it's totally normal. Y'all, it's just yoga. It's not brain surgery. It's not your qualifying exams for your PhD. It's okay if you flub your words. Your students probably don't even notice the way that you think they do. So let me give us all a little mindset shift and a little pep talk about why we shouldn't be terrified of all levels classes. Move us into this, this portion of the presentation here. So mindset issues are real, and mindset issues can really crush your confidence in class. I don't want you to be afraid to turn up for class. I want you to be excited to serve your students. So let me give you a permission slip to feel a little bit less like an imposter in class. And remind you, as I already said, it's not brain surgery teaching a yoga class. You're not landing a jet airliner, and nobody is judging you the way that you feel like they might be judging you. You are there to serve your students. And when you start to focus outward and look at your students and think about your students, instead of having the focus be inward on you and your own internal process around what's happening in class, everything gets easier. So if you've come through my website, you might see it. I have this kind of like manifesto essay there saying you are the guide and your students are the heroes. So once we can start to drop that sense that we are the center of our yoga classes and start to realize that each of these precious students in front of us is the center of the yoga class, everything gets easier. It's a whole lot easier to show up and embody the seat of the teacher, to lead with confidence, and to give your students what they need, because you recognize what you're doing when you're teaching, especially a multi-level class, is setting out a buffet. And the analogy I'll use today, because I love food analogy and I love sweets, is to set out a dessert buffet of things for them, and they can choose what they want. If they're full and they're not interested in dessert, that's fine too. So we're going to give them what we think will suit them. But we also have to recognize that there isn't so much pressure on us to include absolutely everyone in class. When we put ourselves underneath that pressure, we get this sense of having the weight of the world on our shoulders. It starts to feel like we are doing brain surgery or trying to land a jet plane. And then we find ourselves on this pendulum swing that I call the planning confidence cycle, where we spend a whole lot of time trying to control the controllables and plan a ton. As we get into our lessons, we wind up spending more time planning than it takes to teach the class. That is not a healthy approach. You could raise your hand or hide behind your hands if you recognize yourself in that. That used to be me. In my running days, I had a running partner, Patty McKnight. Her sister Margie's around here sometimes. And Patty said she's not going to drive longer to a race than it would take for her to run the race. So she's like, I am not going to a 5K that's more than 25 minutes from my house. And I think that is a pretty fair rule of thumb here. It shouldn't take longer to get there than it takes to be there. So if you're finding that your planning is taking you a lot of time each week, I have a lot of ideas for ways that we can help you with that. And I think you'll walk away with some of those today. So you either overplan and then you show up and you cringe, your Menno brain, as someone said in the chat, kicks in, and you lose your words. You forget the word for chaturanga. You forget warrior one. I've done that before. It's like, well, you're lunging and your arms are up and your back heel is down. And then you get disincentivized to plan, and then you stop planning, and then you show up and you feel like a fraud. So you become trapped in this downward spiral of confidence, when instead, when we can focus on the students and the principles that we'll cover today, we can walk in with a solid plan that we have practiced before in our own bodies and in previous classes, that we can adapt and tweak and set out as a buffet of options for our students, so that the choice becomes up to them. It's not up to us to micromanage for them. It's not up to us to create the perfect experience for them. They get to choose. They get to build their dessert plate. I was just thinking about a taco bar too, right? Like, they get to choose what everything is going to go on their taco. Are they putting radishes? Are they putting avocado? Which salsa are they choosing? They get to choose. So it's not up to you. You don't have this weight of responsibility on you in the same way. So instead of thinking that you need to include everyone in your class, let me introduce this important word, almost. We're trying to include almost everyone in class. And that's how you become almost everyone's favorite yoga teacher, in recognizing that you're never going to get 100% of the way there. If you're familiar with the standard deviation bell curve that kind of goes like this, what we are trying to do in a mixed level class is really include the 80% in the middle. The 10% on either side of that bell curve are not necessarily going to be the best fit clients for your mixed level class, either because they're so beginner that they would benefit from a beginner series or a set of private lessons or a yoga therapy session with a trained yoga therapist who can help them address their unique individual needs, or there are folks all the way at the other end of the bell curve who you could sell a private lesson to workshop their arm balances and get them into handstand or whatever it is that they need. We, instead of getting swayed to the very beginner side of the room or the very advanced side of the room, need to focus on pleasing almost everyone and suiting almost everyone with the things that we offer them in class. And once you shift that mindset, everything becomes a whole lot easier for you. So for the 80%, I have this paradigm that I call SERVE. I'll walk you through it in some flashcards in a second. But SERVE is an acronym that stands for S, structure your class based on sound physiological principles. I'll show those to you in a second. E, experience the sequence yourself before you serve it, before you teach it. And if you were a baker, you would be doing that. You would be tasting things as you go. If you're a chef, you taste things as you go. So you don't just show up either with an elaborate plan or with no plan and wing it and just set out something that you haven't tried yourself. Instead, you embody the practice because you have felt it in your own body. So that's what the first E in SERVE stands for. The R in SERVE is to repeat your sequences with purpose. You could repeat both within the class itself, but most importantly, across time. What I currently do is I teach the same lesson plan all month long. I change things up a little bit week to week. That's the V in SERVE, variation. We vary with intention. We vary on purpose, not just change and variety for the sake of variety, but variation so that people can get what they need and stay engaged and feel things a little bit differently week to week without completely reinventing the wheel from week to week. That's the V, and that's what we're going to talk about for the bulk of today's session. And then that last E in SERVE is about evolving your authentic voice, evolving into the teacher that you want to be, recognizing that you may not be there straight out of your yoga teacher training. You may not be there for the first decade or the first 2 decades of your yoga teaching career. I've been teaching yoga since 2003, so I guess I'm on 22 years now. I'm still growing, I'm still learning, I'm still changing things. I'll admit I only got to this place of like, oh, maybe I don't have to come up with a brand new sequence every time within the last 18 months or so of my teaching. So 2 decades to get here, and I'm still evolving. I'm still growing. It's not fixed in stone. So let's take a look at these flashcards on the serve method. And yes, there will be a replay. It will be posted in Comfort Zone Yoga, and I'll comment on the RSVPs here. So I think it'll push that to you as well. You can then flip through and take a look at these. As I said, the first S is structure. So how can you structure your class based on sound physiological principles? I have something I call the 642 framework. If you looked at my greatest hits lesson plan, you saw a little bit about that. There is a little mini course inside of Comfort Zone Yoga called Fundamentals of Confident Teaching, and it breaks down the serve method for you too. And I glance over what the 6, the 4, the 2 means. In your 200-hour yoga teacher training, you probably learned a lot about anatomy and a lot about pathology. What you may not have learned so much about are physiology and kinesiology. If you've ever gone to massage school, I used to own a massage school. We call it APPK, anatomy, physiology, pathology, and kinesiology. And if your 200-hour trained you more on anatomy and pathology, you're kind of looking at the problematic side of what might go wrong with the human body. It feels a little pessimistic to me. Maybe you had to memorize what muscles are engaging in a particular pose. Maybe you had to memorize a whole list of contraindications. I know I did when I was in YTT, who shouldn't be doing this pose, and that can really lock you up and terrify you. So I, instead of focusing on anatomy and pathology, am here to help you focus on physiology and kinesiology. How your body moves in space is kinesiology, the planes of movement. And physiology is about how your body adapts to training, to chosen stressors, how you can grow. And so this is the optimistic side of yoga teacher training. The 642 is 6 moves of the spine, 4 lines of the legs or hips, and 2 core modes. And this is a reference to kinesiology. Maybe you remember from YTT that we have the sagittal plane that divides our body left to right. It's movement forward, is movement in the sagittal plane. Then you'll remember we have the frontal plane that divides our body front to back. A movement in that plane is movement in the frontal plane, lateral movement, side bending. And we have the transverse plane that divides your body top to bottom. Movement in that plane is like twisting. So the 6 is spinal flexion, spinal extension, side bending to each direction, and rotation to each direction. This should start to sound super familiar because that is your classic warm-up where you do cat and cow. You do like a lateral child's pose or some kind of side bend, and you do a threading the needle twist to either side. When we move the spine in these 6 directions, we are creating a framework for balanced movement. We get to take it in every plane. So that might be a familiar phrase to you, 6 moves of the spine. 4 lines of the legs may not be so familiar because I kind of made it up, but it is a way to make sure that your sequences are targeting the front line of the leg, the back line of the leg, the inner line of the leg, and the outer line of the leg. We also can do something rotationally with our legs. So we're really moving within those 6 planes of movement, but I thought 4 was just a nice, easy way to think about it. And when you're designing your classes, you want to make sure that they're not all just front-back poses. So you're not always in a narrow stance, that sometimes you're facing the long edge of the mat. You've got your feet wide, and you've got some poses that target the adductors and the abductors. That's the 4. The 2 is 2 core modes. Your core musculature can either be working to stabilize the relationship of your spine and your pelvis while maybe other things move. So a plank with a leg lift or a bird dog are examples of that. Or your core muscles can be articulating movement of your spine, which is what you're doing in cat and cow. I have a whole book on this framework. It's called The Art of Yoga Sequencing, and I will come back to that a little bit later. But when you use this framework, it helps you create balanced and effective classes really quickly. And I also like to think in 4 quarters of class. If there's kind of a mat work section at the beginning of class, a standing pose section is the second quarter. Then we come back down to the mat for core and hips as our third quarter. And then we move into finishing poses, final relaxation, integration, maybe meditation, maybe breath work, all that in the fourth quarter of class. So that's the S in the SERVE framework. And when you start to apply this, you'll be able to create balanced classes that can include almost everyone. The experience, the second portion of the SERVE method, is to taste test your sequences before you serve them to your students, just like any good cook would do. That gives you a chance to feel it in your own body first and to really embody the sequence rather than having it be something up in your head. This is how you really smooth out your class, is by designing it on paper and then getting down on your mat and practicing it. The R in SERVE is to repeat. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning, and repetition serves both beginners and advanced students. For beginners, it gives them a chance to feel like they are succeeding. It gives them a chance to learn the basics, the fundamentals. For advanced students, it gives them a chance to tune into the citta vritti, to the fluctuations of the mind, to the subtleties of their breath. So repetition is not making your class boring. Repetition is giving your students a dependable foundation so that they can trust your teaching, so that they can trust their bodies, so that they don't have to be thinking so hard about what goes where and what comes next. So they can really drop into the moment because it is familiar to them. Confidence, both for you and for your students, comes from repetition. But if it was always exactly the same, then that might grow a little stagnant, a little boring. So we then layer on some variety, some variation in our classes. We're going to talk about that as we get into the next section. There's cake ahead because I'm going to use this layer cake metaphor when we talk about variety. But I would wager that if you're taking more time to plan your class than you are to teach it, you are relying too much on variety and not enough on repetition. Finally, we get into that evolution of your teaching voice. And this happens as your confidence builds, as you give yourself permission to be human, to change your mind. All of this is part of the human experience, and it's how you grow, is to have this growth mindset, not this fixed mindset. And serving your students helps you develop your unique voice. Putting your students front and center is the way that you get there. All right, so which part, I would love to know, which part of these might have the biggest impact on your teaching? You could just click on it and be like, oh, okay. I can see that, like, this is where I might have a bottleneck or a gap or a hole in my current planning. It's like, I'm not sitting down enough to write it out, or I'm not getting on the mat enough to test it and feel it in my body. Or maybe I am trying to reinvent the wheel every class. I should get this permission. I'm giving it right here. Here's your permission slip. It's invisible, but it's kind of like the treats that the wizard at the end of The Wizard of Oz gave to the Scarecrow and the Lion and the Tin Man. Like, there you go. You've got the permission. It was really within you all along. Or maybe you're like, oh, I need to know how to modify. Great, because that's what we're about to talk about. Or maybe you're like, I just need to keep going so that I can feel like I've developed my own unique voice. Well, look at the V winning. That is absolutely perfect because this is where we are heading right now. So I'll just click us out of that poll and into the next agenda item, which is an exploration of the V, of the variation. How much variation could we put into a class so that we could include everyone, almost everyone, and people can get what they need from our classes? Because I know that you already do live to serve your students, that you want them to have a great experience in your class, and that a whole lot of this anxiety and the sense of imposter syndrome you might be feeling is really coming out of this really heartfelt and laudable desire to serve your students at the best of your ability. So here's a concept for you. Let's call it the layer cake approach. So visualize a beautiful layer cake. So we've baked some cake, maybe sliced it into some pieces, and in between each of those layers of cake is a layer of frosting. Layer cake, layer of frosting, layer cake, layer of frosting. And typically there's something else on top, a garnish or sprinkles of some kind to give some contrast because we have like the sponginess of the cake. And the cake itself in a layer cake, if the frosting is going to be sweet, is not the sweetest experience. It's like a medium sweetness. And then the frosting is bringing a little bit of extra sweetness. And the garnish, the sprinkles, are bringing a little bit of crunch, a little bit of spice to it. If you have been in my world for a while, you may have noticed that A, I love a food analogy, but B, I don't love to call things beginner or advanced. So we could probably wedge this same framework into like, well, we're going to give these regressive options. I hate that term regression, but that's what we would use in weightlifting. Like, oh, here's how you would regress that lift, regress that move, make it easier. Regressive to make it for beginners, and progressive options to make it for advanced. Or if it's in your practice, you can go, you can start to levitate. There's always another layer, right? You could always take it a little bit farther. But I don't love that because some advanced people might be nursing an injury or have already done 3 hours of hiking in the morning and want the sweeter option. Whereas other people might just have a natural ability that means that they want to go for the spicier option. So those are the words that I use. Sweeter as let's have this experience land a little bit differently. And spicier as in this is a way that we might add a little bit of heat, that we might add some challenge, that we might feel things more strongly. But spicier isn't always necessarily better. And you never really know which one you're going to get when you're making salsa out of peppers. Even from the same jalapeno pepper bush, you might have different intensity spice growing on the same branch. The peppers themselves might be different. Heck, one side of the pepper could be a lot spicier than the other side of the pepper. It's all about the distribution there of the spice. So when we use this term spice, we're giving people room to like kind of taste it and see how it feels, how it lands. Like you don't just take a giant bite out of that jalapeno, you take a little slice to see how spicy it's going to be. So we're operating with this concept that we can make things sweeter and we can make things spicier. But we have as the layer one, the cake base here, the shape itself, like the shape, the seminal shape, the baseline shape. It's what everyone can do safely. It's not necessarily beginner, it's just the foundational, the essential version of the shape. So for a warrior one, it's 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. And that's basically it. Then we can layer on. If we want to make things sweeter, we might take our hands to our hips or even to the front thigh. If we want to make things spicier, maybe the back heel isn't down, maybe the back heel spins up. And now it's a crescent lunge. We've got slightly less contact of the back foot and the floor. We decreased the amount of surface area we have in contact with the floor, and that makes it a little bit spicier. Maybe we lift the arms. That would be a way to spice things up a little bit more. But the basic element is the same. Everybody's standing with 1 foot forward and 1 foot back, regardless of how far apart their feet are, forward and back, left and right, what they're doing with their arms. Everybody is enjoying the same cake base. So it's a vanilla cake or it's a chocolate cake or a strawberry cake or whatever. That's the thing that everybody is experiencing together. Then layer 2 of your layer cake would be ways to make things sweeter, to pile on the frosting. So that is where you make it sweeter. There are lots of different ways that people could experience the same post. If you went to the fancy bakery near you and you got a gorgeous piece of layer cake, you can attack that in a lot of different ways. Some folks just eat out the cake and that's it. They're just scraping it out, working around the frosting because the frosting is too sweet. Others might, like one of my daughters, would just eat all the frosting and leave the cake behind because she was only here for the sugar. And then some folks will just eat the entire cake as is, including the sprinkles, which are the spicier variations. And we can put those on for folks who want to have a little bit of texture contrast or spice or crunch. But we don't present it as like, it's the best way to do it, or this is the advanced way to do it, or someday you'll get here. Practice and all of this is coming. It's just a choice. It's something that you choose to eat or not to eat. The secret ingredient in this is purposeful adaptation. So it's not layering on every variety of everything you ever learned that could happen in a warrior one, for example. That's born out of ego. That's you saying, like, I've got to prove that I belong here in the front of the room as a yoga teacher. So let me just regurgitate everything I ever learned, everything I wrote down on my pose workbook sheet when I was in yoga teacher training. We don't want to overload our students. We're not giving them 20 cakes. We're giving them one slice of one cake, a way to make it sweeter, a way to make it spicier. So I have a little exercise for us here. We're going to look at a couple of very familiar poses and apply this paradigm to it. So we're making a layer cake out of the 3 poses I already talked about: cat-cow, so this flexion and extension, movement in the sagittal plane, and then we'll move on to side bending and twisting. This is a picture from my book, The Art of Yoga Sequencing. This is my studio manager, Alexis Basilisa. She's fantastic and beautiful model. Look at that, so pretty. So what we have when we're doing cat-cow, the cake base is spinal articulation. So it's that your core muscles are working sequentially to move the small bones of your spine joint by joint. This is great for lubricating the joints, for developing a sense of control, for shaking out any tension that's accumulated in those muscles, giving the small muscles a chance to work. To make this sweeter, to frost it up, you could change how you're doing cat and cow. If somebody had a problem with their knees, you might add a blanket underneath their knees, or even have them come up to standing and do a standing version of cat and cow to completely sweeten this and take the pressure off of their knees entirely. If they were having some sensitivity in their wrists, you could take forearms to blocks. That would be a way to make cat and cow a sweeter experience for your students. And if you wanted to make it spicier, to add the crunch, to put the sprinkles on it, you could have them reach an arm forward and back, a leg backward and forward, or both the arm and leg could move at the same time. And then you could layer on from there. Carolyn, bye-bye. We'll have a replay for you. Don't worry about it. So that is one example of how you can layer cake cat and cow. Let's look at how you might layer cake the side bend that we typically teach next. So the base itself is movement in the frontal plane, a side bend. That could absolutely happen from standing, by the way. If your student couldn't be down on their belly for some reason to do this, you could have them come up to sitting or to standing to take a side bend from there. And they're still enjoying the cake. They're just not having some of these extra options. They're the ones who are just carving out the cake crumb itself from the layer cake. So ways that you can make this pose sweeter, or you could take the side bend itself from your belly. So you would start in like almost in a full prone position, like you were going to do locust pose. Just walk your hands over to the side. And that way you get the side bend without the pressure on your knees. Or maybe we're just taking a side bend from table so that it looks kind of like a puppy pose. Your hips stay over your knees, because when your hips go back over your heels, it puts too much pressure for your unique set of knees. It doesn't feel good. Or maybe that's the place from where your students want to launch into the side bend, from back in child's pose. Or maybe they want to spice it up and add some crunch, put the sprinkles on it by pushing back with their top hand and pulling back with the anchor hip here. So those are some ways that we might present this without making it 20 different ways to do this. So you would say, now we're going into a side bend. You can come into the side bend from child's pose, from table pose, or from down on your belly. Boom. We've just given them options to frost it. If you want to intensify the feeling here, you could push back with your top hand and pull back with the same side hip. If you like to make this a more passive experience, you could let your forearm come down to the mat. You could let your body slacken and soften and use your breath to create the sensation here. So that wasn't a million words. That was maybe 50 to 80 words about how you could cue this without giving every conceivable option under the sun, but giving folks a chance to get what they need from that side bend. Third, in this 3-card example, I've given you the visuals here of how you might do a threading the needle twist, because I think it's useful to see. And these are also the home bases from where you could be taking a side bend. So at the top left, you'll see the kind of classic arrangement of threading the needle twist, where Alexis's hips are pretty much over her knees. She's got her top arm extended and her bottom arm has reached through in the classic threading the needle style. That's the base layer of cake here. but maybe she needs something a little bit sweeter for her knees. She could take this twist from her belly. In fact, when you take the twist from your belly, it's sweeter for the lower half of your body, but it's a little bit spicier for your upper back because you've got better contact with the floor than you would in the photo at top left. Or maybe she wants to make this really rotationally focused and she's doing it from child's pose, bottom left image there. Or maybe she's put the sprinkles on and she's played with extending her leg up. You've probably also seen and practiced where you could lift your top arm up and maybe have a hand to foot connection. Those are all ways that we could let our students choose what suits them most in class so they can get what they need in class without feeling deluged by a whole bunch of options. We just give them 2, 3, maybe 4 options, and that's enough. All right, I'd love to hear from you. Does this land with you? Is there something that makes sense? Are you having any ahas about this? Maybe you really do like to teach beginner, intermediate, advanced. I think we could probably use the same paradigm where the cake is the beginner, the frosting is the intermediate, and the sprinkles are the advanced because it's all like kind of going from the inside outside. But as you know, I prefer sweeter and spicier as options. Shannon says that they struggle with running out of time in class when you give multiple options. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. So I would try to limit yourself to 2 or 3, and that will be enough. It doesn't have to be every conceivable option, but also just learning to look at your students will give you a lot of leverage to understand how much to deploy. Like if everybody's already gone to the 5th option that you may have thought to mention, then you don't need to do the sweeter ones. Everybody's already gone to spicier. Or if nobody seems to take the spicier one, maybe you want to give them a couple more sweet ones. Looking at your students is really key here. When we're talking about mindset, another mindset thing that I encounter a lot when I'm working with teachers at every level is the sense that in order to be good teachers, we need to not demo the practice, but instead just walk around the room and looking. I don't think that's true. I think there are lots of examples of places where we need to demo for students, but when you're demoing, it's important that you only demo and then pop out and look at your students, because once you've got eyes on them, you'll be able to see how many options would be useful to give to them. Okay, I'm giving my own answer. Turning to the core of the pose is the main focus so students can build upon it as they choose. That's awesome. Yeah, how few asanas can fill out the class plan? Absolutely. You don't need to have like a huge, all right, I'm going to come up with a new restaurant analogy here, but you don't need to have like a huge, like 50-page menu, a Cheesecake Factory menu of poses that you're planning to serve in your class. And I'm sorry if you're a Cheesecake Factory lover, but when I go to a restaurant and there are too many options, I get a little suspicious. Like some of this must be coming straight out of the freezer, right? It's not being prepared fresh on demand. So we're not trying to overload ourselves, overload our students, prove our worth by wedging in a whole lot of stuff. Less can be more, especially if you repeat. So doing the sequence, not just once, but maybe 3 times from start to finish, or laddering it or spiraling it, all of these different approaches I break down in the Art of Yoga sequencing, all of these can take the base menu items and just expand them in really beautiful ways that will keep your students engaged, A, because the poses are familiar, and B, because they're getting presented slightly differently every time. It's really a wonderful, wonderful way to teach. Yes, small, this is beautifully said. Small adaptations to a pose week from week changes the class without huge changes. And that's great. We want incremental change. We don't want to be a completely different restaurant every time the students come. If they're coming to your class week by week, you don't want to be serving them a completely different menu every week because they came back because they liked what you were serving the previous week. Yes, I love this comment. I find that everyone does the extra options, even if they would be better staying in the basic option for their ability. I have a trick here. It's one that I use when I work with athletes, which is the bulk of my work. It's to put the sweetest one last instead of first. So yes, we might come in at the this is like a medium. If you'd like to make this sweeter, do this, is probably our natural order in which we would set out this buffet for our students. But what if instead you said, or you could do this, or you could do this. And it's that third one that's actually the sweetest one. I do find, yes, the human nature, human psychology is to go all the way to the end of the train line. But what if we actually had a circular train line and we were coming back to something a little bit sweeter? Yep. Yep. I'm just reviewing these. Great. Buffet table. Yeah. Awesome. Great. Thanks, y'all, for that. So let me move us on. Now, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them. I've budgeted about 10 minutes for us to do this and still get out of here on time. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat, or you'll notice here on Butter, you can hit the letter Q, and that will give me a chance to take you to come off mute and ask your question out loud. I am all ears. How do you make the serve model work for Vinyasa? Exactly the same way. So you're going to structure your Vinyasa class based on sound physiological principles. Your Vinyasa class will already have the 6 moves of the spine. It probably already has the 4 lines of the legs facing the short edge of the mat, facing the long edge of the mat, especially if you teach in a mandala. So the structure is there. You've got the 2 core modes as well. You're going to experience it yourself as a student first in your self-practice, even if it's 20 minutes before you leave home to go to teach the class. You run through it yourself so you feel it. Then you repeat it week to week. I think as Vinyasa teachers, sometimes we can be like, it has to change every time, but it doesn't have to change in giant ways every time. It could change in smaller ways every time. Like maybe we do the poses that we did the week before, but we do them in reverse order. Or maybe we hold first, then we pulse. And the next week we pulse first, then we hold. Or maybe we hold everything for 5 breaths today. So we pulse 5 times and we hold 5 breaths. That way you could have the same base ingredients, the same poses in your Vinyasa sequence, but present it a little bit differently every time. So people have a sense of what is coming, just not exactly how it's going to get presented. I was out in California last week with my family on vacation. Our younger daughter graduated college, and we went to a really nice, wonderful 1-star Michelin restaurant. And before all of the main courses, they came through and showed us the ingredients. Like, here is this 10-day dry aged fish. Would you like to touch its cheek and feel the texture that the skin has taken on after 10 days? And also on that plate was like an array of the herbs and an onion, and like literally presenting all of the ingredients that we were about to be served. So we could see them, but we weren't exactly sure how it was all going to come out of the kitchen when it was ready to eat. And I like that idea. Like your students, if they're committed to coming to your class week in and week out for the course of a month, might be like, these are the poses that we're on. You can even say this, like, as you know, this month we are working our way up to half moon. So they know, like, all right, these are the shapes that we'll be taking en route to half moon, but you could practice half moon differently every class of the week. Maybe one time you're doing it with the support of the wall. Maybe one time you're doing it with the support of a partner. If your class is into that, I wouldn't spring it on them, or definitely don't make it required, but that could be a great way to practice half moon. Or maybe we're doing half moon without using the block. So we have to really control from center, and we're not even trying to touch the floor. We're trying to use our core musculature to make this a suspended half moon. They have seen the plate with the herbs and the vegetables and the fish that they're about to eat, but they don't know exactly how it's going to be played out week to week. It keeps them guessing in a friendly way, while still getting the chance to really embody that shape week in and week out. So we've got both repetition and variety. And then, of course, every class you teach, you're evolving your voice as a teacher. So serve works for any method. It works for restorative yoga. Lucky you, you get to practice and experience your restorative sequence before you teach it. Any other questions? Pop them in the chat or hit the Q. I see Rachel's typing, so I'll give a moment for that to come through. Oh, good. Questions coming in. All right, Catherine's came through first. How do you keep students from popping out from the demo? Oh, gosh, this is a great question. when you do, if they're used to just imitating what you're doing, I would say, here's what it would look like. And now I'm going to come out and check that this has landed with you. Y'all keep going. We do have those students, don't we, Catherine, who like, if you go to put up your hair, they put their hands back here. You go to wipe your nose, they put their hands right here. Very visual learners. So I would be very explicit. And this is also a way for those of you who are trying to wean yourselves off of demoing throughout the entirety of class. This is a way to break your students from that habit, is to say, I'm going to show you the shape, and then I'm going to come out and look at you. Or you can follow along with me on the first side, but on the second side, I want to see how this is landing with you. I'm only going to give visual cues, or I'm going to go stand in the back so that you can start to trust your own embodied knowledge of the sequence. You can start to really feel your way into this sequence. So just making it explicit what you're doing, your students will stop staring at you when you say like, I am going to walk around the room so I can see how this is landing. They won't need to track you with their eyes because they understand what you're doing. Rachel says, I teach Power Vinyasa classes. Would you give extra time for the more advanced versions or always stop at 5 breaths? I held students too long and extended side angle the other day, allowing some time to get into Bird of Paradise. Yeah, timing is always going to be fluid and just going to depend. Forgive me for wedging another food analogy on here, but it's kind of like how your bread baking would be different if it was hot and humid out than it would if it was really dry and cold out. So it's always going to depend on the student, on the temperature in the room, on what time of year it is. Just do your best to guess and don't get hung up on trying to make it perfect. Remember, we're trying to please almost everyone. We're trying to make it almost great. This is part of the second E in evolve, right? We're learning as we go. We're coming back around. And yep, sometimes we put students in extended side and go a little too long to get them ready for Bird of Paradise. But as long as they are making smart choices from their bodies, a little too long isn't going to hurt anybody. And it's always incumbent on your students to make those choices. So maybe even say like, I left them there a little too long, could switch to like, they didn't take themselves out even though it had grown too long. Because you're not making your students do anything. You're just setting out the buffet. You're not force feeding them. Any other questions can come through in the chat. I am delighted to answer them. It's always a treat to spend this time here with y'all and talk through ways that we can reduce our planning time, level up our confidence, and help our students better. Thank you, Catherine, for being here. I love it. So if questions come up that, as inevitably they do, like after we hang up, you can pop them in the zone. There's a whole ask a question space in there for you. I also love to have you give yourself an intention right here. Which one of these will you commit to? So I'm going to start moving us into wrap up. For more, you can read my book called The Art of Yoga Sequencing. I will put a link when I send the recap up later. And if today's workshop resonated with you, I want to tell you that I have a program called Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing. It's a 6-month mentorship membership where I give you a recipe. I show you how to iterate it. We practice it collectively as a group. And we get together on a live call like this once a month to do some co-working and think through some ways that we could adapt this, different flavors of layer cakes to give to our students. We break down the serve method in depth. We talk about 642 framework a whole lot, and we have a good time in Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing. So I'll put a link of that in the recap as well. But if you come to comfortzoneyoga.com and look on your left sidebar, there's a little tasting menu there for you to have a listen to that. I host these calls every month, generally on the third Thursday of the month. The next couple months are booked out. Next month, I am talking with my colleague / student, Joe Paul, about ways to apply his very clear, very simple trauma-sensitive framework to any class. He and I co-taught a workshop on this last month, and it was fantastic. It's soon going to be a course that you can take in Comfort Zone Yoga, but we're going to answer your questions and talk about ways that you can be a more trauma-informed teacher, because all of your classes are trauma-sensitive, include trauma survivors in them, all of them. You just don't know it yet. If you haven't realized it yet, now you know. So I want to equip you with tools so that you can make those a more sensitive place that makes your students feel as safe as possible. Joe Paul will give us a whole lecture about how you cannot ensure anyone's safety. You can just do your best. It's kind of like when I say you'll try to include almost everyone in class. You can never include everybody. So that is next month's call. And then in August, my student Sandy, who is in Mastering the Art of Yoga Sequencing, is going to join me for a call on chair yoga. Chair Yoga 101, how to apply the 642 framework to your chair yoga classes. If you were thinking about learning to teach chair, or you want a little refresher on how to teach chair classes, or you want to be a good sub for your studio colleagues who teach chair classes, that will be our call. Then we come back into talking about classroom stuff in September. I'm really grateful to y'all. The date of the trauma sensitive class is, I think it's let's see, I'm just looking it up right now. It's certainly in the 17th. Yeah, July 17th. And it's in the sidebar or under events. So you can sign up there. I'm so glad, Tanya, that you got a lot out of this. I'm so glad to all of you for being here. I hope that you will go forth and serve. Remember, repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. Bring your questions to me in the zone.